I used to work the night shift at a small, isolated gas station just off the highway. It wasn't the busiest place, especially during the late hours, but it was still a job. The station was positioned in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense woods on one side and fields on the other. Sometimes I'd go hours without seeing a single customer, and the loneliness would get to me. One night, around 3 a.m., the station was dead quiet. I just finished stocking the shelves when I noticed a car pull up. It was an older sedan, dark colored. The headlights were off, and it rolled up to the pump slowly. I stood behind the counter, staring at the vehicle through the window. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw a shadow of a person in the car, sitting motionless in the driver's seat. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. It was odd. There was no one else around, and the car had no license plates. Maybe they're just tired. People sometimes rest on the side of the highway. I waited for the driver to move, but nothing happened. I picked up the phone and dialed the non-emergency police line, asking them if they can come check it out. The dispatcher told me that they'll send someone by, but it could take a while since no one was in the area. My eyes kept darting to the window, but the car remained still. The figure inside just staring forward from what I could tell. Minutes passed, and the unease in my chest grew heavier. Eventually, I grabbed my flashlight, muttered to myself that I should at least go see if the person was okay, and stepped out into the cold night air. I flashed my light through the window. The person inside hadn't moved a muscle. It was then I saw it. The figure wasn't holding onto the steering wheel. Their hands were pressed flat against their face, as if they were cradling it in their palms. It was a strange, unnerving position. I knocked gently on the window. "Hey, are you alright?" The figure didn't move, not even a twitch. I could feel my pulse picking up speed, and dread began to creep through me. What if this person was gone? I took a step back towards the dark woods. I then turned to head back to the station. That's when I heard it. A low scraping sound, like nails on metal. I spun around. I was startled. And let's say I wasn't as manly as I thought at this moment. My flashlight shaking in my hands. And there, behind the car, was another figure, standing in the shadows. I froze. The second figure stood motionless, staring in my direction, almost as if they had been waiting for me to notice. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could barely breathe. Then, without warning, the first figure in the car jerked upright. Their hands dropped from their face, and they looked directly at me. I jumped back, stumbled over my feet, and rushed inside, slamming the door behind me. My hands had never shaken as much as they shook as I tried to lock the door. I hurried to the phone. I called the police again. I can only imagine how I sounded on this call. I told them about the figures, about the car, everything. The dispatcher assured me that they were sending someone over, but it didn't seem like they were taking me that seriously. Moments later, the car pulled away, shining their headlights to the window as they pulled out. It drove off down the dark road towards the highway. The police never showed up. I don't know if I imagined it or something was really out there, but I can imagine those eyes staring at me, and the scraping sounds still haunt me. I ended up quitting that job not long after. It was just too creepy for me. Was this person in the woods watching me? Did they get out of the car when I wasn't looking? To this day, I don't know who or what those figures were, but it often crosses my mind, and I feel so lucky that I got back in on time. This happened back in October, but I haven't been on Reddit for a while, and stumbled across a sub on my page and realized I finally had something to add. I wish I didn't though, after this experience. This is the most danger I've ever felt in my life. I'm a 19-year-old female. Let's start off with some context. I work at a typical photo studio that is placed within a retail store. Not going to name which one, but your first guess is probably correct. On this particular day, I was scheduled to work 3 to 7, which was our closing hours. Unless there's an oversaturation of appointments in a particular time, it's usually one employee working at a time. It's in the basement of the two retail stores, tucked away in the little back corner. When I arrived that day, my manager and coworker were both still there, getting off at 3:30. I clocked in and started chatting with my boss about how things were going. There was one family in the camera room, running a little behind, and she gave me details about my assigned family. She also encouraged me to try to get a pull in, which is when we try to get customers from the retail store to take photos in exchange for 2 free pictures fully printed and shipped. That's when I noticed a man in a prison-looking outfit. It seemed a little off, though it looked like a costume, not something real. It was October, so costumes weren't totally unusual, but it wasn't Halloween weekend or anything, so I thought it was a bit strange that he was just wandering the store with no appointment, especially in such a quiet part of the retail store near the photo studio. I don't think my boss fully registered how odd this behavior was, because she approached him and asked him if he wanted to take some pictures. She mentioned his costume would be perfect for a shoot. I didn't catch much of it since I was busy checking in the next family. My boss walked by me while I was setting up the studio and let me know that this guy was interested in photos after my current appointment. The family I was working with was great and everything was going smoothly, but I noticed the man had come over and was sitting on the bench closest to the studio. No big deal though. The bench is usually for parents to watch or put their things on, but it wasn't a huge deal that he didn't know that. Before leaving, my boss popped into the photo room and said something like, "Hey, I'm getting some weird vibes from that guy, so I'm gonna have Andrew check in on you to make sure everything is fine." The retail store manager. After I finished taking the family's photos, it took me a few minutes to edit them. They headed out while I stayed on the computer, working on the edits. At that point, the man started walking into the studio, asking if it was his turn. That's when I noticed a crowbar. It was real, not a prop, and he was swinging it around. I started getting nervous and told him to wait outside for a bit. While he was outside, he sat on the bench, twitching, nodding off, and getting up every now and then. I could tell he was on something, and it was just me, him, and the single mother with her 2 kids. I stopped focusing on editing and started watching him closely. He was making the family uncomfortable. He kept waving the crowbar around, and I started getting really concerned about the glass window and my own safety. He came into the studio a few times, demanding to know when it was his turn. His blank stare was unsettling, and at that point, I was on edge. When I finished editing the family's photos, I was shaking as I went through the checkout process. The mom quickly picked up on the situation. The guy kept peering over the computer to look at her photos. She eventually snapped, loudly asking, "Can I help you?" He rambled on about how he was supposed to be taking photos. She leaned in and whispered to me, asking if I was okay. I scribbled something on their appointment paper, trying to subtly communicate that I needed help, and wrote that my manager was supposed to come over. By then, it had been an hour and a half since my coworker left. The mom was still uneasy, but we finished the transaction. I felt paralyzed. I was one swipe away from being alone in the studio with a man who had a crowbar and was clearly on drugs. When I went to swipe the mom's card, it didn't work in our system. If the card doesn't work locally, we have to process it at a regular register in a retail store. I saw this as my chance to get out. I grabbed the new transaction receipt and walked her over to the registers in the salon area. The second I was out of the man's line of sight, I burst into tears. I explained everything to one of the salon employees, and they immediately paged the manager. They asked if I wanted to wait in the break room or the salon, but I'd had to walk past the man to get to the break room, so I stayed in the salon, the mom reassuring me, telling me that there was no way she was leaving me alone with him. That made me feel a little better, but I still had to wait it out while the manager and another guy went to confront him. After about 15 minutes, I peeked out to see if he had left, and thankfully, he had. I was so relieved that I didn't have any more appointments that night, but I still had to sit alone in the studio for the rest of my shift. Every time the elevator doors opened, I flinched. It took me a while to calm down, and I still feel uneasy when I work alone sometimes. The scariest part, though, came after. About 45 minutes later, the store manager came to check on me. I asked him about the guy and how things had gone when they confronted him. The manager told me that the guy absolutely flipped out, throwing the crowbar on the ground near them. After mall security arrived, they were able to escort him out, but I still can't shake the fear of what could have happened if I had been left alone with him. I planned to wait for an Uber after work, but instead, I waited in the studio to get a ride home with my mom. The Smiling Man. I'm aware that that title sounds like a horror movie or creepypasta, and if I hadn't lived it, I would think it was. This is one of many stories I have from working the night shift at a laundromat in a bad area, and is definitely the freakiest. So for some context, my mom took a job years ago at a local laundromat because she knew the owner and needed extra money. I was around 10 when she got the job, and she allowed me to come with her because she'd give me a little allowance for helping her do small tasks. I ended up going with her every night for years, and as I got older, I mainly went there to make sure that my mom was safe because I worried about her. We'd regularly deal with angry customers refusing to leave, most of which were drunk or high, and would have to call the police a few times. My mom was always worried about me tagging along, but I insisted, and to this day I still can't say I regret it. A lot of good came out of it, mainly work experience, and that made up for how intense it could be. I have a lot of interesting stories from that time, but this one takes the cake for the most horrifying, and it took place when I was about 12. Being the young and dumb kid I was, I designated myself the job of chasing off people when it was closing time. We would have people parking behind the building pretty regularly, so I'd walk to the side of the building and start yelling that they were now trespassing, and I would call the cops if they didn't leave. I feel this was important to bring up because I now realize I'll let any shady person hanging around the building at night know of my presence, and that's a dangerous thing to do when you're a 12-year-old girl. I was blissfully unaware that anything could happen to me until one night when we showed up to find the door lock had been broken. My mom had unlocked the building that morning, so it wasn't like this was a break-in attempt since it had been unlocked all day. We were a bit shaken up, but my mom texted her boss to let him know and just told me to tell her if I saw anyone pull up. After about 30 minutes, I finished my few tasks and sat down to draw on my sketchbook. I had barely sat down for a few minutes when I heard the door swing open, which startled me because normally people just knock when they see the very obvious close sign. My mom noticed it too and yelled that we were closed. I heard an older man's voice respond, explaining that he had just came in to use our drink machine. We normally let people in to use our snack and drink machines, so my mom told him he had a few minutes and went back into the closet to grab something. I was sat about 7 feet away from the drink machine, so I heard him walk up, but didn't really pay too much attention to him. I continued to draw until I started getting this feeling that someone was watching me, and when I realized I didn't hear the guy put any money into the drink machine, I nervously glanced to my left and saw a tall man in his mid-60s staring right at me with a big smile on his face. I jumped a little, but forced an awkward smile back at him and directed my attention back to my drawing. As soon as I did this, I heard what sounded like shuffling, and when I looked over again, he was closer. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to just not look at him. But every time I would look away, he would shuffle closer, his body still facing the drink machine, but his neck craned in my direction, and he wouldn't stop smiling and staring. I began shaking and panicking, and my eyes were darting back and forth between him and the closet door while I tried to plan a fast escape. I went to reach for the knife in my bag because I couldn't even imagine this man's intentions, and quickly realized that it was not there. I had left my knife at home when I needed it the most, and I was petrified. I decided to just stare back at him, despite being terrified and trembling violently. and after what felt like an eternity, he suddenly broke eye contact and yelled to my mom to have a good night before turning around and walking out. Relief hit me instantly, and I tried to calm myself down after what just happened. I thought I was finally safe and started to get up to splash some water on my face when I saw him sit down on the bench outside. Panic and dread hit me like a brick, and I sprinted to the closet to hide. I filled my mom in on everything, and she told me to run to the car and that she would get between me and him with pepper spray if needed. I did as she told me and ran to the car, and as I passed him, he stood up and began walking towards the car. My mom yelled at him to get away from her car, and his reaction was to try to calmly start a conversation about the make and model of the car while staring right at me. She ignored him, hopped in the car, locked us in, and started backing up as quickly as she could. I ducked down in my seat, but could still see him standing there, and I know he could see me because I watched as he lifted his hand and waved goodbye before walking around the back of the building, disappearing into the darkness. I felt sick. I couldn't sleep that night. I never dared to set foot anywhere near that building again, so I guess that was a lesson learned. Creepy old smiling man, let's not meet again. This happened several years ago when I was working at a downtown jail in a large city as a counselor. I worked a weird shift and got off at 2 a.m., so it was obviously dark when I got off work, and most people on the roads were people who just closed down the bars downtown. At this job, I interacted with inmates who were various levels of stable and sober, and sometimes they were released at the same time I was leaving work. The garage where I parked was a couple blocks away from the jail, so I was cautious walking back to the car, but I usually didn't have issues. Anyway, this particular night, I got to my car safely and started home, about a 25-minute drive. Very quickly after I pulled out of the garage, I noticed a car right behind me with its high beams on. It followed me through the downtown, onto the highway, and then exited on my exit. I wasn't too freaked out yet because I live off a major road, but then it took every turn I did and it pulled into my apartment complex right behind me. Well, at this point, I'm getting concerned, but it's a big complex, so I just head towards my building. The car is right behind me. I usually back into a reserved parking spot, but this car was so close I literally can't. I pull in forward. The car drives up behind me and stops, blocking me in. At this point, I'm scared. I consider calling someone, but all my friends are probably asleep because it's 3 a.m. Calling 911 feels like an overreaction. So I finally dial 911 on my phone, but don't press the call button and step out of my car. A man gets out of the other car. He's tall, white, wearing a vest and a fedora. I'm a female, 26, blonde, 5'3". He stares at me for about 10 seconds and says, "Oh," gets back in the car and drives off. Still one of the weirdest encounters in my life. I'm a 20-year-old female. I have a stalker, 20 or 21-year-old male. So this started about 2 or 3 months ago. I work in an art store and we do a little of everything, helping customers, cleaning, stocking shelves, etc. One day this guy came in asking for some help as he had never really took up art before. Lucky me, I was chosen to help this guy. We talked for a bit and I asked him what he wants to learn, what medium he wants to use, and such. He said he's into sketching at the moment and wants to expand his horizon. I say cool, and I give him a few directions. Somehow it comes up that I'm also an artist, and he's really interested. He asked me if I can help him with his art, which caught me off guard because, huh? I said I'm not professional, and I'm not interested in teaching. He took it well, and off he went. The next week he returns and specifically asked for me. He said he brought a sketchbook this time. I found this odd because I don't remember agreeing to help. He shows me some of his sketches, and I notice he only draws K-pop singers, and I realized one of them is a member from BTS, and I pointed it out. I don't listen to them. He starts raving about BTS and K-pop and the like. Apparently, I hit a sweet spot for him, because nobody likes K-pop and I knew about it. Anyway, he starts coming in every few days, and at that point, I was really disturbed by him. I had also found out that he had learned what my work schedule was, my birthday, my name, and how old I am. I only found this out because of a few encounters with said customer. One day I clock into work, and I see him waiting on the stairs for me. He acts all surprised. Whoa, I didn't know you were coming in so early. I could tell he was lying because he was sweating really badly and couldn't look me in my face. It creeped me out so much. 2. On my birthday, he came up to me at the exact time I'm supposed to start my shift and gave me a gift and a note. He said he drew me a member of the band and gave me a birthday card. He told me that he wanted to give me something a day before my birthday because he knew I wouldn't be coming in the day of. Mind you, I never told him my birthday. He probably overheard me talking about it with one of my coworkers, and that really creeped me out. I had insane amounts of anxiety and had to muster up the courage to act like I wasn't completely put off by this. After he walked away, I looked at the note that he had wrote me. Happy 20th birthday. Keep making people happy and being so kind. P.S. I'm not a paper thief, so you can have this back. Huh? Paper thief? And then I realized the paper the note was written on was a piece of garbage I threw away months ago. He picked it up from the trash to return it to me? That made my blood run cold. He came in and asked for help like usual. He brought up buying something for kids, and because of this, I wanted to know if there was a wife or something involved. I asked, "Oh, how old are your kids?" Obviously, I also had a note to give him age-appropriate supplies. He started freaking out, saying, "They aren't my kids. I don't have kids. I'm not married." And started asking me if I was married. I said I'm not married, but I'm in a committed relationship and have been for 5 years. A lie. He got very disappointed and walked off. I thought maybe that was it. He didn't come in for 2 weeks, and I was overjoyed until today. He came up to me during work while I was busy and asked for help. He asked me where I was for 2 weeks, which really confused me, but also disturbed me deeply. I tried my best not to interact with him and told my coworker to take over for me while I hid in the back. She agrees and keeps him busy, and then he just ends up leaving. After he left, she called me over and said I can come out. I asked her, "Did he ask anything about me?" She looked at me with a concerned look and said, "Yeah, he did. He asked why you were so busy all of a sudden and when you'll come back out, if you work tomorrow." I'm riddled with anxiety, and it's making me really anxious at work because I'm afraid to see him. Thankfully, he hasn't done anything physical to me, but put a lot of mental strain on me. I don't want to quit because I love my job and my coworkers. Also, very important to mention, after the birthday incident, the moment he left, I went up to management and told them everything about him, that he creeps me out and I feel unsafe. My manager said, "It's totally legitimate to go after a girl like you. That's what men would do back in the day. You should feel flattered." And the coworker said, "It's all because women wear little clothes nowadays. It makes men act up." I have to conform to a dress code. I haven't even shown as much as a shoulder. I told my parents and friends, and they're all on my side and think he's a complete weirdo. Honestly, I don't know what to do about it. It's really creepy, and I'm scared to encounter him again. Update. Thank you so much for your advice and comments. It felt so validating to see that I'm not alone in experiencing such things, even if some people don't consider this extreme. I also talked to my dad about it, and he really came around and understood me. He asked me if this guy scares me, and I responded yes. He said that's all he needs to know, that he'll come over there himself if this guy doesn't stop hanging around the store. The guy came in again today, but right before I had to clock out, I tried to ignore him and was mostly successful as my coworker took over for me. He came in asking about paintbrushes and asked which one to get. My coworker offered him all kinds and he came up to me and said, "Hey, which one do you think I should get?" Again, I tried pretending like he wasn't there, but I couldn't escape to the storage room as it was already locked and it was beyond our closing time. I said, "Hey, what kind of paints do you use?" As there's different brushes for different paints. He replies with, "Oh, well, I don't have any paints, and I don't paint." And it clicked in my head that it seems like he just wanted an excuse to see me. My coworker was very confused and asked him in response, "I just advised you on what to get. I don't see why you need to ask her." And I shit you not, this freak says, "Oh well, I know her better, and we have a connection." I was mortified by what he said. I was about to clock out, and I managed to take a sneaky photo of him. My mom came to pick me up because she was worried that he may try to follow me home if I walked. After I get home, I get a message from my coworker, younger than the one I usually work with. This is a morning shift coworker, and she asked me all kinds of questions. "Hey, I noticed something was very off about you when you were about to close. Was that guy someone you know?" And I just couldn't contain it. I let out everything and told her. She sent me a voice message in response saying something along the lines of, "Okay, tomorrow when you clock in, you, me, and our boss are going to sit down and talk about this and how to prevent this guy from talking to you or coming into the store again." She also was very understanding and told me about a case a few years ago. The exact same thing happened to another young girl who worked there. It blew my mind, but it also kind of pissed me off because, this has happened 2 different times with 2 different guys and you still don't protect your workers? Never mind that. She gave me words of encouragement and said that I'm not alone and that all of us, my coworkers, are there to protect me. I went into work after my coworker spoke up about this to my personal manager in the store. She asked me all kinds of things about him, what he looks like, what he's been doing, and whatnot. The whole time she was very supportive and was disgusted by the owner's reaction to this. The whole team in the store gathered up together and we started speaking about countermeasures and how to move forward. He was banned from the store, and if he continues trying to get in, my coworkers will protect me and hide me. We also talked about not giving out any info about each other ever, though I thought this was very obvious. I'll also be escorted to my parents' car or to the bus by one of my male coworkers I have. We've had a long conversation about this, and I'm not sure what my manager said to the owner, but they seem to have turned around on the situation and see him as a total creep now. I also informed the police about this creep. They said that right now they can't do much about it because he wasn't doing any major stalking things, but at least they know what he looks like in this situation, which is important, I feel. Let's start with the basics. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I work at a blind store where I'm alone during all my shift. I work from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. It's a very simple job most of the time, as I just look at the computer, do some customer service, offer quotes to the very few people that enter the store, and so on. So like I said, it's very boring and not much happens. But lately, something started to catch my attention. I noticed across the street someone looking directly at the store. More precisely, looking at me. I don't handle cash at the store. We mostly work with credit cards and debit cards, so I don't think they were planning to rob the store or something like that. I noticed that there's a telescope on the window and it's pointed directly at my desk, so I think it's very obvious to say that the person is looking at me. I left my phone recording while I was at work for about an hour, hour and a half, and I could see in the recording that this person moves the telescope once in a while, and that was when I would go to the restroom. The telescope moves while trying to find me. So yeah, I have not seen this person's face or anything, but Surely enough, this is creepy. Update 1. Thank you so much for your comments and responses to this post. I didn't expect this to get any attention, so here goes with some more info about the situation and more details about the store. This person is looking at my desk through a door, so my blinds can't protect me. In addition to this, I moved my desk closer to the wall so the person can't see me anymore. I did this just because I'm getting video proof of this person's behavior. I just found out about the stalker this Tuesday, and I don't know if he or she has been doing this for weeks, and I just noticed it now, so I'm already being careful when I get off work. After reading all your suggestions, I've decided to go and have a little chat with the building administrator and show her all the evidence I have collected. I will do this today. I may update this in a week if something worth mentioning happens. If not, then Monday I'll update the post. Update 2. So I already showed the evidence to the building administrator. Let's call her Anna. And she was shocked. Even more when she actually saw the telescope showing through the window of the apartment. She told me that the apartment that had the telescope is being used by 2 girls, maybe in their 20s. And these 2 girls are weird. Their apartment is small, but they are not cheap. And these 2 girls started living there almost 2 months ago. She told me that she doesn't see these girls leave the apartment often, and most of the food and groceries are delivered to these girls via delivery drivers. But something that does occur is a man comes to the apartment every 2 or 3 days and leaves early in the morning. The man is the one that actually made the rental agreement and pays for the apartment, so he's probably paying for food and rent for these 2 girls. Now, Anna says when the rental agreement took place, the man said these 2 girls would be living there because they're in college, but she hasn't seen the 2 girls go to college or anything like that. So yeah, this is weird. Anna is going to speak about this issue with the owner of the building and the man who signed the rental agreement, so this activity stops. Last update. Okay, so this weekend, I didn't think too much about the situation anymore. I tried to enjoy my days off without worrying about my job. So just today I come to work, open the store door and begin to work. I then noticed that the window to the apartment was closed. This window was always open, and I noticed that the telescope was no longer there. I sent a message to Anna asking if she could tell me anything about these girls, and if something was being done about the stalking. Apparently, Anna, the building manager, and the mysterious man had a short conversation this Saturday. They called the man on the phone and asked him if he could talk about some complaints about the apartment. Then they told the man that the girls were harassing the stores in front of the building. Luckily, they didn't say it was me who was complaining. They told the man that this behavior should stop because that's not something tenants should do. So far, the man has been listening and paying attention to the requests. Everything was normal up to that point, but then the building owner had a question. It was a quick question. What career are they studying? Anna said that the man changed his attitude completely, said that he should mind his own business, and just left. Sunday comes, and the man calls Anna to give her the keys to the apartment. He didn't explain why or said anything else. He just gave her the keys and left. She was very confused and also worried about the girls, mainly because she didn't see them when they left. I told her maybe they left early in the morning, like the man used to. I asked if there was something wrong with the apartment, like missing stuff or damages, but Anna said everything was fine, nothing was stolen or broken. Also, I asked if she heard noises, yelling, or anything that Saturday night. Nothing, she says. She's thinking about filing a complaint with the police because it feels wrong that they would just leave like that. If you ask me, I think the reason why they left was because the building owner asked about the girls. I don't know what to think about this. If Anna does end up going to the police, I will probably provide my testimony or something, if it's helpful. I hope I don't have another update to this post, because I wouldn't want to know more about this than I should. I used to work in a kitchen design studio. We had a host desk at the front to answer quick questions and handle small customer service issues. One day, the host, 21-year-old female, needed her break, and I, 34-year-old male, told her that I would take her spot for her break. About 10 minutes into her break, a scuffy-looking dude with an unlit half-cigarette in his mouth came in. I gave him the usual, "Welcome in, how can I help you?" service industry greeting, and the dude just looked at me, silent for about 2 minutes. Then he walked over and started rubbing my shoulders while saying, "You're a good man. You'll be okay." I just kind of froze. I didn't know what to do. He wasn't attacking me, but it was super unnerving. I told the host about it, and she said that she was glad it happened to me instead of her. Anyway, that guy got arrested after lighting half the block and sidewalk on fire. This is a story about how I was almost kidnapped by a coworker. Who knows what he was planning? You tell me. When I was in high school, I worked for a family-owned plant nursery and garden store. At the time this took place, I was a cashier and had been working there for 2 to 3 years. It's important to note that while I was in high school, I also attended a vocational school. The students at this vocational school came from all over the county, so it wasn't uncommon to have friends or know people from a few towns over. The place I worked was a perfect spot for a teenager to get a job. There were a good mix of adult employees and teen employees, and was a fantastic place to work. During summer one year, a boy started working there. For the sake of the story, I'll call him Connor. I recognized him from the vocational school we attended. We got a bit friendly at work, but I would have never considered him a friend, just a coworker, acquaintance. To be honest, I always had an off feeling about him. His mannerisms and actions just made me feel uncomfortable, but I had no reason to be mean or dislike him because he never gave me a reason to. It's hard to explain, but I just got a gut feeling of some kind. Before I go any further, I want to give a little more context about my job. To get to work and home, I took a bus or got a ride from my dad. The bus stop was about a 15-minute walk from my job, and the ride included a transfer at some point. If the buses were on time, it was a 25-minute commute. With rush hour and late hours, and full buses, it could take 45 minutes plus. My dad only really drove me to and from on the weekends. After a few weeks, the more interactions with Connor, I started to get the feeling that he liked me. Whatever register I was on, there were multiple throughout the store, he'd frequently make passes at, and sometimes even stop to chat for a minute. I always maintained a friendly coworker vibe, and did not do or say anything that may have made him feel different. One day, he asked if I wanted a ride home. I found this odd because I didn't think he had a car, as I always saw him skateboarding to work. I just declined, and we went about our day. The next weekend he asked again, and again I declined. I asked if he had a car, and he said no, but he could ask to borrow a car from his parents and drive me home. I told him that wasn't necessary. I didn't mind taking the bus, and it just so happened that my dad was picking me up. This exchange probably happened 5 or 6 more times. Gotta give it to him, this boy had some persistence. Every time I politely declined, but after the third time, it started to creep me out. In my high school teenage girl mind, I thought I was making it pretty clear that I wasn't interested in spending more time together. The last time he asked, I caved. He asked early in the morning. It just so happened that day, it was planned that my dad was going to pick me up from work, but he had told me on the way to work he wasn't going to be able to. I can't remember why. Something with his girlfriend, I'm sure. Anyway, I was feeling pretty bummed about having to walk and take the bus. If I remember correctly, it was supposed to thunderstorm all day. Connor came up to me as I was opening my register and said, "Hey, I finally got my own car." I was happy for him, as our conversations at work in the recent weeks were about his parents possibly bringing him car shopping soon. We talked about it and I congratulated him. Then he asked if I wanted to ride home that day. At this point, I was honestly fed up with that. I thought, what the hell? Maybe if I say yes and let him drive me home once, he'd stop asking, so I agreed. The day goes on and eventually lunch rolls around. I take my break and end up going to eat in the break room. When my break was almost over, another employee comes up and starts talking about how there was a couple cop cars in the parking lot with their lights on, and 2 officers went into the admin office. The rest of the story is what I pieced together from what the others told me. The local police made occasional drive-bys of my place of employment. The owners had some family friends who were officers, and they looked out for them. I guess on this day, that family friend cop did a drive-by and noticed a car in the parking lot that had been reported stolen that morning. He pulled over to investigate. I guess at this time, when another officer pulled up, a backpack was spotted, very crappily hidden behind a nearby tree. They do some investigating, found some things along with an ID, and went into the admin's office. The police officers tell them what they found, and Connor is called back to speak with them. It turns out Connor had stolen his uncle's car that morning. The backpack that was found had his ID in it, along with a rope, duct tape, and a switchblade. When he was called into the office, his uncle and parents were called. I guess his uncle said that he didn't want to press charges, which is why Connor didn't leave with the police. The boss asked Connor to leave for the day, and he did. I don't know if he was questioned about the contents of the backpack, and if he was, I don't know what his answers were, or the reasoning for having all those things. No one knew that he was going to give me a ride home that day. I hadn't told anyone. It wasn't until after things went down that I told my mom. Connor didn't work there long after that. The whole thing creeped me out so bad, I made it a point not to run into him at the vocational school. I remember using humor as a coping mechanism of the whole weird thing. Oftentimes, my mom and I would joke around about the guy who was going to try to kidnap me. I only remember this now because 2 or 3 years ago, I was scrolling through Facebook when I came across a shared memorial post. I recognized the face, and when I checked the profile, it clicked where I knew that face from. It was Connor. I had blocked this kid, and this clearly traumatizing experience out as well. I completely forgot about him, his name, that we worked together, what happened, and by this time it had been 8 years. After some digging, I learned that he had died from a drug overdose, and on his profile, it had his previous place of employment, one being my old job. This made me message my mom. I texted her and said something along the lines of, "Do you remember Connor?" "Are you serious?" "What? You mean the guy that was going to kidnap you?" That was all she had to say. I had a crazy flashback. I was so surprised and concerned that I could block out something like that. I'm clearly still trying to process it. It's been 2 years since the conversation with my mom, but anyways, this is my creepy encounter. From the age of 13 until almost 15, I had a paper route. I delivered papers to people's doors 6 days a week. All of my customers, aside from an occasional grump or chatterboxes, were absolutely wonderful. Most of them were older, and so many of them were happy to see me every day just to have someone to talk to. Most of them would leave me things like granola bars, water bottles, and even tips. Winter holidays were a great time because everyone who could left huge tips. It was pretty good for a first official job. Eventually, some of the snowbirds moved back and became my customers. One couple, Lois and Gerald, will always stick in my mind. They started off normal, pretty friendly people. But I noticed one Sunday, the only day I had to get up early to deliver papers, that Gerald was outside. He chatted me up, nothing unusual. Because it was so early, and because I'd usually go right to bed after I was done, I was wearing a Britney Spears shirt and a pair of polar bear pajama pants. He complimented and said I dressed cutely. I was confused because it was just pajamas that I threw on randomly. I was confused by the compliment, but I just went on about my day and didn't think much of it. Something else to note, his wife Lois was always smiling. I couldn't pinpoint why, but it always unnerved me. Anyways, I noticed that in their garden, there were 3 different dog headstones that all said Fido on it. I was kind of confused as why they all had the same name. One day, Lois was out and she had her dog with her. She introduced the dog to me as they had just adopted her, and guess what? They named her Fido. All the dogs they had were named Fido, and they were all Shetland sheepdogs, just like that one. I thought this was weird and I told my mom about it. She told me not to be judgmental, as it was probably one way they dealt with grief. Here's the thing, they kept trying to get me to come inside. They'd invite me in for tea, which is not something normally people would do from where I'm from. Coffee and donuts are a little bit more commonplace, but even that isn't something people do on a regular basis. Or they invite me in to talk to them. I would always decline because I had more papers to deliver. I wanted to get home. Gerald kept complimenting my outfits, even though they were just pajamas. One morning he did this while getting closer to me and eventually touching my shoulder. I eventually was like, I gotta go, and left. I didn't tell my mom at the time, as our relationship was good at that point, and I feared that telling her any concerns I had would make her not trust me or make her mad. This was also the tail end of my child's sexual assault, which she doesn't know about to this day, so I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, right before I moved and gave up my paper route, a really bizarre incident happened. It was a Sunday, the last Sunday I had on the paper route to be exact, so I was out early delivering papers. It was still kind of dark out. Gerald was outside. He complimented my outfit again, getting all creepily close. He invited me inside and I said, I really don't think my mom would appreciate me being gone for longer than she expected me to be. She's strict. Which wasn't the whole truth, but you gotta do what you gotta do. He seemed to get kind of annoyed and just asked, won't your mom just prefer you to respect your elders and not turn down an invitation? I felt the color drain from my face and noped out of there so quick. I muttered something about how I really needed to hurry along because my dog was sick. I heard him say some compliments about how my hair looked really pretty. I booked it as quickly as I could to the next house without running. I didn't see Gerald after that, but I did see Lois, and she never stopped inviting me inside to play with Fido or have tea. I always declined. She seemed disappointed every time. So that's my weird paper route story. Maybe I'm paranoid, but Gerald and Lois had some funky vibes. So Gerald and Lois, let's not meet. I was 19 and had been with my fiancé for about a year. He was my boyfriend at the time. We both worked at the same chemical manufacturing company. I was a night shift lead on my team, and we had just hired this guy, Gabe. Gabe was probably in his late 50s or early 60s. As the shift lead and trainer, I had to interact with him no matter what. On the night shift, after 2 p.m., my team and my fiance's team were pretty much the only people around. This is important because it meant I had very limited options to avoid Gabe. So Gabe started talking to me about his preferences in women. At first, I didn't see how this was relevant to me, and I made it clear that I didn't care about his preferences. I was trying not to make a big deal out of what seemed like small talk, but he kept going. He started sharing his ideas about women's roles, saying things like, it's fine for women to work temporarily, but eventually they should settle down and have kids. It works better when one person works to pay the bills and the other manages the household. I'm all for respecting people's life choices, even if they don't align with my own, and I realize many people live this way. Personally, I didn't agree with his views that women should always be the one at home, but I let him talk. I didn't see the reason to get involved since it wasn't about me, and I figured I was the opposite of his ideal anyway. We even got into a heated debate about the economy once. Gabe said that the economy was great because everyone could be rich. To which I explained that it's impossible for everyone to be rich in an economy. But beyond that, things were fine. Then, my boyfriend had to leave the company for health reasons and went unemployed. Since we only had one car and I had a learner's permit at the time, I wasn't comfortable driving alone back home at 1 a.m., so I gave my boss 3 weeks' notice to ensure that they could train the next person up properly. My boss appreciated this and told the team. That's when Gabe started acting differently towards me. During the first week of my notice, I had a hickey on my neck. My boss knew about it, but he didn't care since we didn't interact with customers and it didn't affect my work. But Gabe evidently did care. While I was working, he tapped me on the shoulder and I assumed he had a question. Instead, he addressed my hickey. "Don't you think it's a little unprofessional?" he asked. I replied that no one needs to put on a show for anyone and that it didn't affect my ability to do my job. He came back with, "Well, what if it bothers people or our boss that you're parading your personal life like that?" I told him that my boss has no issue with it. I would take care of it, but since no one had said anything, I assumed they didn't care. That's when Gabe asked, "So you don't care if it hurts someone's feelings?" I found that response strange. I didn't see how my hickey would hurt anyone's feelings. If it bothered someone, that was their issue, not mine. Gabe walked away, and I thought that would be the end of it. Later, during lunch, I noticed Gabe holding his phone at a weird angle, and it looked like he was taking a picture of me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without being sure, but my instincts told me that he was taking a picture. I didn't know for sure, but it would be confirmed later. By my last week, I was completely fed up with Gabe. I had trained the person taking over my position, and I told her that she would be the one making the decisions during my last week. I also privately told her I wouldn't engage with Gabe anymore, and I'd appreciate it if she handled him from here on out. She agreed, but Gabe wasn't ready to let it go. He pushed for conversations with me, and one day he said, "I just don't think I can take orders from a woman. She can't be my boss." I reminded him that I had been his boss before, and that the boss above me was also a woman. He didn't want to accept it, so I told him it didn't matter how he felt because I was leaving, and my replacement was in charge. If he didn't like it, he could quit. On my last day, fate decided to throw me a curveball. My replacement had an emergency and had to leave early, so it was just me and Gabe. I had no choice but to direct him again. As we were leaving, Gabe stopped me and asked me a question that made everything click into place. "I know your boyfriend is unemployed now, so how would you feel if someone asked you if you were going to leave him for someone who could provide you with a house, a car, and everything you need?" I lost it. First off, I love my fiance deeply. We've been together for over 6 years now. Second, I've always worked hard for everything I have, and the idea that I'd be with someone just for their money was deeply insulting. I'm not shallow or materialistic, and I've never relied on anyone but myself for support. So I told him honestly that I would be extremely offended by such an assumption. It showed such a lack of understanding of who I am and also insulted my character. Then I left, ready to never deal with him again. It became clear to me that from the beginning, Gabe had been approaching me with romantic intentions. What made it even worse was our 40-year age gap. I was disgusted by the whole thing. After I left, I kept in touch with a woman who took over my role, and she told me that Gabe had been telling people that we were in love and that I was going to leave my fiance for him. He even showed the people a picture he had taken of me. I was glad it was confirmed that he had, indeed, taken that photo. 3 months later, Gabe texted me a "Hey" with a smiley face, because I had given my number to employees just in case they had to contact me. I immediately told him never to contact me again, that the only reason why I ever communicated with him was because I was his boss, and that there was no reason for us to ever speak again. Then I changed my number to make sure he couldn't reach me again. So a few days ago, I was outside my workplace, unlocking the ice thing to get a couple bags for a customer. A man rode up on his bike and stopped a few feet away from me. He said, "What's up?" I had a lot to get done that day, so I didn't even glance at him and just said, "Nothing, working." As I was rustling around in the freezer getting ice, he was talking, and once I pulled the ice out, I heard him saying, "Dead bitch." I was hopeful that he was just mumbling to himself or something, gave the bags to the customer, and as I turned back towards the store, he continued, "I'm gonna tie you up and fucking kill you. Get ready to die, cause we're gonna shoot the fuck out of you. I'm gonna kill you the next time I see you." That was all I heard because I went back into the store and called 911. I hear a lot of random threats at work, but this guy got to me. My heart felt like it was gonna shoot out of my chest. I could hear it beating. The cops are at our store for shoplifters multiple times a day, and since I didn't see a weapon, they were in no hurry to get back. From speaking to them earlier, I know that they had been dealing with a lot that day. Too many people getting all kinds of intoxicated on 420, I suppose. About an hour later, with me keeping an eye on the entrance and cameras the whole time, they showed up to take a report. One of the regular panhandlers who hangs outside and heard the man popped in and said, "He's across the street." They immediately went and arrested him. After having me confirm his identity with him facing away from me, I said I did want to press charges, made my statement, and was told that he'll get a court date and that maybe I will have to appear. I can also file an order of protection, which is nice and all, but I feel like someone who randomly threats people wouldn't care about that. He knows where I work, most likely that I'm the one that called about him. Now I'm worried about walking home at night, or any time really, in a neighborhood that I've been my whole life. Let's not meet again, guy. This just happened hours before posting this. I'm currently off work and decided to deliver for DoorDash to get some extra money on the side. I was on my way to deliver someone food when I accidentally almost hit a guy while changing lanes. I don't know if I just didn't see him, or like he sped up to get in front of me or whatever, but he took it very personally and went back into the left lane and he sped up and brake checked me. Then I stepped at a red light. He got out of his car and hit my window. The light turned green, so I sped off, and then he pulled up next to me at the next light. He was shouting at me a bunch of nonsense, so when the light turned green, I sped off again, and I thought I lost him. I delivered the food and decided to go home. On my way home, he found me and pulled up next to me, shouting again. I called my dad while I tried to lose him. Eventually, I pulled into a gas station and he drove off. My dad came and we talked. While we were talking, I saw a car that looked like him drive by, but I'm not sure if it was him or not. After that, my dad and I drove home. So to the psycho with anger issues that looked a lot like Queso, let's not meet again. I was 18 years old when this happened, and I'm 32 now. I worked as an assistant at the fire department. One night, a woman called in saying that she was the widow of a deceased fireman and was looking for someone to fix her grandson's computer as he lived with her. By that time, I had already completed some IT courses and was used to receiving calls from family and friends to do tasks like that, so I took her number and told her that I would call her back later. I asked the sergeant about her and mentioned the name of the deceased husband. He confirmed that she was who she said she was and that they were very familiar with her calls for help like this. I called her back and told her I could help. I quoted her price for the job. She agreed, and we scheduled a day to get it done. On the scheduled day, I gathered all the necessary equipment and went to the address she gave me. It was in the city center. When I arrived, it was a really old building and the bell wasn't working, as the man exiting the building told me. I waited around 30 to 40 minutes for her to answer the phone to let me in. She lived on the 5th floor, and there was no elevator, so I took the stairs. When I finally reached her floor, she opened the door quickly and let me inside. As soon as I looked around, I couldn't have been more disgusted. The apartment was filthy, and the smell was unbearable. I know this might sound like I was judging her for her lower status, but since she was a widow of a fireman, she receives a pension that should be enough to take care of herself and her grandson. There were cockroaches everywhere, and I had to hold myself back from vomiting. She guided me to the computer, and as we passed the bathroom door, I noticed the bathtub looked like it had never been cleaned. Once I started working on the computer, she kept talking to me about how lonely she was and how handsome I was. She offered me food and drink several times, which I obviously declined. Then her grandson came into the room. He looked about 7 or 8 years old but spoke like a baby. She kept telling him how nice I was and that I was going to fix the computer. The boy asked her for a cup of milk, and she went in to prepare it. During the entire time she was in the kitchen, the boy just stared at me. I tried talking to him a few times, but he didn't respond. It felt like I was in a horror movie, and I could be a victim of murder at any moment. I'm not sure why, but I didn't feel safe there. She came back with milk for the boy, and I noticed that she was holding a knife in the other hand. She said that she was preparing lunch and went back into the kitchen. At that point, I was sure that something was going to happen to me. I quickly finished the job and called her into the room. She came in, still holding the knife, and I told her I had finished and that I was leaving. She insisted that her grandson needed to test it first. Since she was still holding the knife, I agreed. The boy tested the computer and told her it was faster now. At that moment, she turned to me and said that she didn't have money with her. I just told her it didn't matter and that I could come back and collect the payment later. She finally let me leave, and I almost ran for the exit. When I graduated high school in 2008, I was kind of at loss with what to do with my life. I got a job at the local convenience store working the night shift, and for the first 8 months, I really enjoyed it. My parents and friends would always be concerned about me getting robbed or murdered, and rightfully so, but I never had an issue with anyone. About a year in, I finally experienced an encounter that made me change my life. It was a pleasantly cool late September evening, and about 2:30 in the morning. The door opens and a skinny, frail figure of a woman comes in. I'll never be able to forget her. If it wasn't for the way she was acting, she honestly would have been kinda cute. She had a collarbone waterfall of brown hair, tan skin, and attractive figure, and was wearing a tight-fitting dark gray tank top. I say that she was in her late 20s or early 30s, but it was her eyes that really captivated me, and not in a good way. This woman had this blank and distant stare. It was like she was an expressionless shell, moving purely on robotic instincts. She didn't say hi, howdy, what's up, doc, or anything even after I greeted her from just 4 feet away. Honestly, I just assumed that she was high or something. She moved past the front counter towards the little household supply aisle we had. She picked up a little bag of cat food and turned back towards me, staring me straight in the eye so intently that I thought she was going to pull out a gun and shoot me. What she did was honestly not much worse though. She got to the front counter, never breaking her silence or gaze, even after I tried talking to her. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a $5 bill and like 3 quarters. With tax, it was still a little short of the price, but I'd take $1 out of my wallet and stick it in the cash register later. She was starting to creep me out. After I took the money and rang her up, she didn't move, just stood there staring at me without even blinking. I tried speaking to her again, but this time she brought the cat food up and opened it with the littlest ease I've ever seen a package of pet food get opened. By this time, I was just standing in silence trying to figure out what the heck she was doing. Her gaze is unflinching, and she reached into her bag and pulled out a big handful of cat food, staring at me as blank and emotionless as the very second she entered the store. She shoved the whole handful of pet food in her mouth and started crunching away, bits and pieces of the cat food dropping from her lips onto the floor. I wanted to say something, but I was too flabbergasted to even get the voice out of my throat. Finally, after a couple minutes of chewing on her food, the woman just turned around and walked out of the store holding the bag of pet food. My boss pulled up the camera footage of the incident the following morning before I clocked out. He said that he had seen that woman before, but only once in his 5 years of employment there. He told me, and I kind of think it was a lie, that she was a crazy woman who lived in the old mausoleum in the city cemetery. He said the cops knew about her, and as part of their initial nightly patrols would go and check to make sure that she wasn't dead. That night was a night that made me decide to go to trade school. I never want to work at a gas station again. Every so often, she still appears in my nightmares, just standing there, staring at me with his deep, blank eyes, crunching a handful of cat food. Nope, never want to meet her again. This happened a long time ago. I was a petite, small girl, and I was only 18 or 19 years old. I worked at a junior food store in Kentucky. There were a couple of incidents that happened to me in the short time I worked there. I have several other stories, but those are for another time. The store was somewhat isolated, and I was left alone most of my shifts. My manager, who happened to be married, and another employee that happened to be my manager's best friend, would leave me to meet their boyfriends. Some of my duties consisted of sweeping the parking lot and measuring the gas after closing at midnight. I hated doing this by myself. There weren't any other businesses open anywhere close to me. This was back around 1984, so of course there were no cell phones. I was very naive at the time. One night I received this call from this man asking if we had any Playboy magazines. I informed him that yes we do, and a few other magazines. He asked who was the centerfold in the Playboy. The phone I was using was a cordless phone at the time. I politely told him to just wait a minute. I looked at the magazines and told him the name of the model. He then asked me if her pussy looked juicy. I froze and hung up on him. Thank God he didn't call back. It scared me so bad, and I really felt like an idiot for even looking at the centerfold for him. The second incident was a lot scarier than the previous one. When I was hired, I was instructed to call the police if anyone stayed out in the parking lot for more than 15 minutes. There weren't many people that came to the store after dark, and the night that I was scared for my life, it was no different. I completed all my duties at the time, and I was just waiting until I could close the doors and go home. A man pulled up right in front of the door, in a light-colored car. I've never been able to distinguish the make or model of any car. I waited for him to come in, happy that someone would break up the silence of my shift. I could see him as I stood at the cash register. He was leaning over, looking at himself in the rearview mirror. He continually wiped his face and hands. I couldn't see anything on him from where I was standing. I immediately got a really bad feeling about what he was doing. When he had pulled up, I glanced at the clock and time crept by as I was watching him wipe his face over and over again. I waited 15 minutes and then I called 911 and told the dispatcher about the situation. In no time, 2 police cars pulled up and confronted the man. I watched them handcuff him, but didn't see anything else due to the fact that another customer came in to buy some gas. It seemed like forever before the officers came in and thanked me for calling them and asked if I was okay. What he told me next made a shiver run through me and my blood run cold. He informed me that the man had been wiping blood from his face, and there's a huge butcher knife type with the handle broken off, and it was covered in blood as well. He said the man appeared intoxicated, and since the car was running, they arrested him for DUI. The officer added that they had contacted his family, and everyone appeared okay. He added that they didn't know whose blood it was, but would continue to investigate to see if they could find someone that he apparently hurt or killed. I never heard anything else regarding this case. I realized that anything could have happened to me that night, and I quit shortly afterwards. So phone guy and bloody guy with a blood-covered knife, let's not meet again. I work at a retail grocery chain, and within the store, there's a liquor department that is separated from the rest of the grocery section. One day, I was working in that department when a man came in. He had bought a few alcohol shots and struck up a conversation with me. Everything seemed normal at first, but then things took a very strange turn. He pulled an axe out of his backpack. I was completely shocked. It's hard to explain how surreal it was to see a man rambling about how nobody would dare mess with him because he had an axe. He held it out in the open, talking about how sharp the blade was. To prove his point, he cut his receipt in half on the counter right in front of me, demonstrating the sharpness of the blade. He went on about how the axe could cut through bone and flesh. I was doing my best not to escalate the situation, so I tried not to react or say much. Honestly, I was kind of frozen and didn't tell him to put the axe away or leave. My goal was to stay calm and get him out as quickly as possible. As soon as he left, I immediately let my supervisor know. She pulled me aside to ask for a description of the man. Our security officer was able to spot him on the store's camera footage, and my store manager ended up contacting the police. I gave a statement to the police officer, who told me he had spoken to the man outside in the parking lot, and the man would be trespassed from the store. Looking back, it was a deeply unnerving experience, being alone in an isolated section of a store with someone who seemed mentally unstable and holding a massive axe. I'm a 19-year-old female. I work at a small shop in the UK. This shop has no cameras or security measures. Today, a man comes in and starts pressing me for personal information. He asked my age, exact birthday, parents' names, surname, the town I am from, and the school I went to. I didn't feel good about him, even though everyone says he's harmless. He apparently did this to another young girl working there. He came in 3 times today, and he also claimed that I didn't give him enough cash back. Other customers stuck up for me and said that he was being aggressive. I don't want to work on my own anymore, so I've asked my manager if I can work with someone else, but she says she'll have to ask her manager. I'm only a temp, so if they say no, I'm handing in my notice. What do you think his intentions are? Would love to hear your thoughts. Also, would love to hear what you think regarding people that brush off this behavior or unsupportive managers. So I work in a small family-owned shop in Australia. We get odd people here and there, but this guy was next level. He was all around creepy and off-putting. It started fine. He asked me some questions about what we had, where it's from, what the best things are. You know, normal things where I work. He then went off to do his own thing for about 5 minutes, and then he came back to me. This is where it gets weird. He said something along the lines of, "Do you have social media?" I say, "Yes." He replied with, "I feel like I've seen you on websites before." I take a second to reply and say, "I don't post myself on social media. I don't think I'll be on any websites." He goes, "You don't have to lie to me." Winked. I won't tell. And again, I don't know what to say. He just walks off and says, "I'll see you later," and winked again. My coworker was there when this happened, and she looked just as shocked as I probably would have. I had no idea what this man meant. I'm definitely not on any websites. I don't often post myself, face or anything. I've never seen this man before. My aunt owns a local diner in the middle of a small town. where everyone knows everyone. Recently, she had almost half of her waiters quit within a month, which she knew about but didn't tell me why when she was telling my mom this, and I overheard it while doing homework at the dining table. She then asked my mom if my two older sisters could help out. My mom said that the oldest is moving out of town to live with her fiancé, but agreed to let my older sister work. Then my aunt asked about me. Mind you, I'm a 15-year-old girl, and the last thing on my mind to do after school is going to work, even for a few hours. Even if I had time to get home in the evening and finish my homework, I still wouldn't like the idea at all. My mom was quiet for a little bit before agreeing, since even I know money is a touchy subject. Ever since my dad divorced my mom, I had chosen to stay with my mom 100% of the time, because my dad is an alcoholic and often liked to hurt my mom's feelings, and has done some nasty things to my sister and I. I don't even know where he is now, probably in jail, or married to another poor woman who will be his next victim, but that's partially the reason why we were struggling when it comes to money. Fast forward a week. I went to school on a Wednesday morning like normal, except I had to pack an extra set of clothes in my already stuffed backpack. My aunt talked to me and told me that I would have to wear a uniform, and that she doesn't want my mom to know what I wear, so she wants me to put it in my backpack instead of going to school in it. She even said that she can wash it every week since it will probably smell like eggs and other dining foods. I usually take the bus to school, so days that I work, I'd have to take another bus that dropped me off about 2 minutes away from the diner. The bus driver really doesn't care if we get off at unusual stops, or maybe they had no idea and we're just working for a paycheck, much like I'm about to do. And each end of my shift, my auntie would drop me off back at home, after I changed my clothes back, of course. Once at the diner, I would go to the back through the kitchen, which had two chefs who worked harder than any cooks I've ever seen, and then I would walk right to my auntie's office. There, I could see her computer on a desk, a whole lot of paperwork, clothes around, and just a total mess. So my outfit is basically a button-down white t-shirt, a white mini skirt, and one of those teeny aprons that only covers you from the waist to the crotch. I kinda like the way this fits on me, but the fact that I'm wearing all white means I'm gonna get dirty, maybe every night. My sister has a similar outfit, but her skirt is longer since sometimes she doesn't shave her legs. I just know I don't want to have the same issues she has. The first night went well. I got a lot of people looking at me funny and asked if I'm a kid, to which I told them my age, and some of them were upset that a kid was working. Some were happy, thinking I was trying to help out a family business, and some were just weird and happy to see me. Whatever the reason it was, I just like talking to people, so this was super easy. Plus, most of them didn't mind that I would bring out one plate at a time, instead of 5 or 6 like a pro waitress. Friday night comes around, and this is the night I finally meet the guy who's one of the main reasons why the other waitresses quit. My auntie really wanted me to meet him since he's in about 3 or 4 times a week and orders a good portion. His name was Larry, and he seems really nice and friendly. He even treated me more like a friend than a waitress, and would have me sit down with him and told me stories about how he fixed cars, travels for work, eats at every restaurant ever, and stayed at every hotel in the world. I never told him my age, but I'm pretty sure he could tell I'm a minor. Often enough, he sits at a booth in the corner of the restaurant and would ask me to sit beside him so he can kick his feet up on the other bench, which I didn't mind. But it only started to get weird when he would poke one of the buttons on my hidden apron and thinks it's my belly button and asks me if I had an outie belly button and if I'm ticklish. I do in fact have an outie belly button, but I didn't want to tell him that. I would just fake a giggle. Sometimes I would feel his hand brush up on my chest, which I didn't care much of either. But there was a few times where I felt like he was feeling my chest from my nipples, which I still don't know why he would want to see them, since my chest is pretty flat. Again, I'm 15, I'll know they'll grow. Sometimes he would grab my arm or thigh and give me massages, which didn't really feel good, and I tell him that I didn't like it. He just tells me that I'll start to like it. Usually for every visit from Larry, I'd make up a dozen excuses that I needed to go before he would accept and let me go. I didn't mind anything weird from Larry. He seemed innocent enough, like a grandpa who just wanted to spend some time with his grandkids. But I really wish I wasn't chosen to babysit him every time he comes in here. Since he spends about $100 a week here, my auntie just tells me to ignore him and let him ramble on since he's one of the reasons why the business is still afloat, which are my auntie's words. But I'm pretty sure $100 a week can't cover the rent alone. After about a week of seeing Larry most of my shifts, he comes in with his laptop and shows me his Facebook and told me to look myself up so we could be friends. I seriously don't want to see Larry in my life 24/7, so I lied and told him that I never made a Facebook. He simply laughed, thought for a second, and wrote my whole name out on the search bar. For a second, I was so shocked that I turned pale, even from my light skin. I had a name tag, but only my first name. But my stupid sister probably told him our last name when he asked. She may be older, but she doesn't act like it. He found a picture of me and sent me a friend request, to which my phone goes off, making Larry laugh, and my heart dropped to my stomach. He sent me a few messages just to hear my phone go off every few times. As I pull it out and fake a laugh before swallowing the throw up in my mouth, he then proceeds to go to my gallery, which my Facebook is public since I'm stupid enough to make as many friends as possible, much like Instagram, and try to gain as many followers. He found pics on there which I wish he wouldn't have found, and would comment on how my clothes were too revealing and I should take these pics down. He commented on my friends and how he could find me a good set of friends to be with, to which I had no idea what he was referring to since he told me before that he has no kids and lives alone. Then he sees my picture with my belly button revealed and comments on my Audi belly button and pokes my belly button again. I could really feel his finger try to find my belly button, which felt so disgusting that I just got up without a reason and stormed into my auntie's office. I confess everything to her and tell her how disgusted I am. And at first she seemed to be on my side, but when I explained the things he did to me, she quickly changed sides and told me that I'm just over-exaggerating and he's just treating me like a kid in a friendly way. I wanted to burst out crying and ask my sister for help, even wanted to talk to my mom about to confess at all, but my sister calmed me down and told me how my auntie would have to let us go. Then we wouldn't have enough money to keep our apartment and that we would have to live with our dad. I had no idea if this was true, but the things that my dad did to me are in fact way worse than what Larry had done so far. Fast forward a few months to present day. I still work at the diner and see Larry almost on a daily basis. He still acts the same and once in a while touches me, but it's gotten to the point where it's nothing too concerning, like my chest or thigh, which I still don't care too much about. I only care when he touches my belly button or nipple. I know that for summer, my mom will make me work, and because of my age, I legally can't find a job anywhere else. I'm pretty much okay if I have to keep working for summer. The only good thing about Larry is he would often order twice in one sitting, which made my auntie very happy, and I would get a good tip because of it. I guess if you have any advice, I will take it, but I don't think getting rid of Larry will be of my best interest, since I've read too many creepy stories about stalker situations, and trying to escape a creep only makes things worse. But also, my auntie would probably fire me, and my mom would be upset. If I reveal this to my mom, this would make my family situation much worse, since my mom relies on my auntie way too much. But either way, it feels good to share this. I feel like just talking about it makes me feel better, and reading other stories makes me feel like I'm not alone, and maybe I'll find help in the best way. I might be in this situation for a while, but sharing it relieves some of the stress. Thanks again for listening. If I have any updates, I'll post them here. Edit. Thank you for all your comments. I wish I could respond to all of them. I'm glad everyone is so nice and helpful, and also the messages of advice too. I want to talk to my mom, but I'm scared this will make her worried for me and bring her down. My mom secretly drinks to relieve her problems. I know she'll blame herself for this, and I don't want to see my mom's drinking get worse. I think I'll work through the summer vacation and quit after. Larry comes in almost every day. After reading some comments, yesterday I told him I'll be deleting my Facebook and made it private and deleted him from my friends list. He was sad and asked a lot about it, if I'm okay. I still don't think Larry's a bad person. He's just lonely, I think. I didn't talk to my auntie yet. I love my aunt, and I don't think she would want to put me in danger. But I also think she doesn't think Larry is a bad person. I really want to work hard this summer and make a lot of tips for my mom. Maybe enough that I can make up a reason to stop working after summer vacation. This is a long story, so stick with me. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I'm a bartender. I have some stories where I've been generally scared for my life, but this has got to be the worst. I'm working a double at the restaurant. Around 11 a.m., a delivery man comes in with a package that I needed to sign for. He comes. I sign for the package and tell him to have a good day with a smile. I continue my shift per usual. This was a Friday or Saturday. I can't remember, but later on we got busy. The restaurant and parking lot are full. I see a lot of different people daily, plus seeing someone for the second time ever out of their uniform. You may not recognize them. FedEx driver comes and sits at the bar. I don't remember him from the 25-second interaction we had that morning. I start talking to him as I do all my customers. I get him a drink, appetizer, another drink, entree, etc. Our conversation started. How long have you worked here? A few years. I have worked my way up. How do you like it here? Just a regular conversation with bar guests. It slowly became not so regular. He asked if I had a boyfriend. I said yes. He would change the subject and then go back, complimenting me, saying how beautiful I was every few minutes. Can I have your number? No, I don't think my boyfriend would appreciate that. Okay, what's your last name? We could be Facebook friends. All annoying, but normal interactions I've had with men in this industry. He started to become really pushy over time, pressing for my phone number or social media. I continue to politely decline and laugh it off. He then tells me, I actually came this morning to drop off a package with FedEx. You signed for it. I came back just for you. I smile, continue with my stupid customer service. Oh yeah, I remember you. And then smile and laugh it off. I even stepped in the back to vent to my manager at this point about how he was extra pushy and uncomfortable. Flash forward about an hour. He pays his tab and leaves. I'm just glad he's gone at this point. We'll say as a guess, it was about 7 p.m. when he leaves. We are still busy and we close at 10 p.m. We finish dinner service. Customers slowly start to leave and the restaurant is finally empty. I've been cleaning for a while and I'm finally finishing up. It's about 10:30 p.m. at this point. I'm cleaning the bar. I look up. The whole front of the restaurant that is facing me consists of a large window that faces a parking lot, and I see one car in the parking lot. I notice that it's the delivery driver guest from earlier. He is standing outside the car, walking around and seeming like he's cleaning the back seat out. Door opens, and he's leaning in and out with a bag. As soon as I realized it was him who left almost 4 hours ago, my heart sank. Why was he still here? Why was he cleaning the back seat out? I freak. My manager and I are the only people left at the restaurant at this point. It's almost 11. I run to her and tell her everything about how he came back just for me and about how he had seemingly left 4 hours ago. And I made her come from the back of the restaurant to behind the bar up front so she could see him in the parking lot. She says she's going to call the police. At this point, my boyfriend and I had an apartment literally 5 minutes away from the restaurant. I told her not to worry about it. I'll just call my boyfriend to come get me. I did just that. But my boyfriend could immediately tell something was wrong. And when I'm scared or anxious, I ramble. So I gave him a quick debriefing of what's going on. He said that he'll be there soon and hung up. My manager made me sit in the office until he got there, so I didn't see this go down. All I remember is my boyfriend coming into the restaurant to get me, walking me to the car through the back door, and getting me home. My boyfriend, who is very confrontational and protective, later tells me that he pulled into the parking lot to see a FedEx driver sitting in his driver's seat of his car. My boyfriend walked up to the car and knocked on the window for him to roll it down. He does, and my boyfriend tells him something along the lines of, "You need to get out of here." This is where the scariest thing happens. The dude responded to him in a different language, mumbling and acting like he didn't speak English. My boyfriend said something like, "I know you speak English, you've been talking to my girlfriend all night, and you need to get out of here." The dude continued rambling in a different language until my boyfriend raised his voice and basically said, "You have 15 seconds before I pull you out of this car, and you never leave this parking lot," before the guy finally put the car in drive and sped off. I was on edge for weeks after this interaction and have considered switching jobs. Why was he still sitting in the parking lot that long after we closed, and hours after cashing out his tab? And why was he cleaning out the back seat? To the creepy bar guest, delivery driver, let's never meet again. I work at a large retail store as a self-checkout host. Most of my days involve walking laps and hearing customers say things like, "I don't work here," or "Why aren't you at a register?" I get it, it can be frustrating. Usually there's 2 or 3 of us manning the self-checkout area, with a couple of regular registers open. We got a new guy, let's call him Terry. He always wore a mask, since it was 2021 and COVID was still going strong. I was training him, telling him to stock the candy in bags, and he asked me the usual questions. If I was in school, if I had a girlfriend. I live in a small city that's big enough to have a decent college, so students from all over tend to end up either at the prison or in retail. I usually ask them the same questions. I told him no to both. Then he asked me if I ever went hunting. Our town is surrounded by forests, so it's a common question. "No, I don't like guns," I told him. He casually replied, "Well, I'll have to take you one day." A few days later, he was back on my side of the store. He asked me if I had family in town, and if not, where they lived. I told him I lived just 3 doors down from my mom. Then, out of nowhere, he started talking about hunting again. He said he was out with his friends and they started using pack tactics to corner their prey and finish it off. I thought that was strange, especially for deer, since they usually run away at the first sound of noise. He was off for a few days. New hires often have trouble getting hours the first few weeks, and when he came back, one of my coworkers pulled me aside. They told me that Terry had been talking a lot about me. The next time I saw him, his questions took a darker turn. "How tall would you say you are? How much do you weigh? How well do you know the woods past so-and-so street?" I'm a big guy, 6 feet tall, 300 pounds, and when he brought up hunting again, it felt off. A chill ran down my spine. "Come on, man," he said, leaning in a little. "You'd like it. Just some good old boys shooting the shit late at night in the middle of the woods. Then the real fun starts before dawn. They won't know what hit them." The mask covered most of their face, but I could see his eyes when he smiled. I don't know what made him think that that was a good way to convince someone, but it definitely creeped me out. I felt like he was implying something much darker than just a hunting trip. Honestly, the whole thing sounded more like a horror story than an invitation. I must have made a face because he suddenly turned and walked away quickly. I told a couple coworkers about it, but that ended up being his last day. I never saw him again, and honestly, I'm hoping we never cross paths again. I'm a property manager and 1 year postpartum, so I returned to my company part-time. This was fun because I got to float around to different apartment communities who needed help and just help where needed. In September, I helped a property about an hour away from my house. It was a bit of a drive, but fairly small property with relatively no big problems, so easy money for the day. I'm covering for the manager out on vacation, and of course, it's the dreaded 6th of the month. This means I'm handing out letters and making calls, unfortunately. Definitely not my favorite part of the job, but it's necessary. The one thing I hate about floating is the residents don't know me well, so I'm delivering late letters and calling, and they don't even know me. Again, not my favorite part of the job, but it has to be done, so here we go. I had about 10 letters to deliver. All was going normal and fine. Some people answer the door and say, "Yep, sorry, I'll have it paid on such and such date." Another person didn't answer, so I left the info on the door, but they flipped me off as I was walking away. All pretty normal stuff when it comes to the job. I get down to the 7th or 8th person. I walk up to this apartment, and I can tell from the outside that the occupants have absolutely destroyed this home. I smelled cigarettes, cat urine, and general mustiness before I even knocked. All blinds were broken, blankets up on the windows, all the works. I get to the door, do my normal knock, waited about 5 seconds, and was ready to post the notice to the door. Right as I was folding it up to put it in between the door slightly swings open. A gentleman wearing just boxers and half a cigarette hanging out of his mouth opened the door, but he doesn't unlatch the security lock, so the door does not open all the way. "What do you want?" he says, as he's giving me a death glare, but also looking me up and down inappropriately at the same time. I explained that I was just there to deliver late letters and that I'd be on my way now. As I'm explaining this, I notice he keeps looking over his shoulder, as if someone was standing next to him behind the door. I find this odd, as if someone was hiding from me, especially because this gentleman won't open the door all the way. I hear some whispering, and now I'm sure he's communicating with someone. The gentleman at the door asks me to wait and says he has things in his apartment that he needs me to look at. I explain that I'm just there for the letters, but he can send photos to the office and that I can get work orders in. He begins complaining about our maintenance team and states he really wants someone to take a look in person. At this point, I feel really uneasy. Typically, I would enter to help with no problem, but between the looks that this guy was giving me and the creepy who knows who's behind the door, I'm just not feeling safe at this point. I defer again, trying to make myself sound unimportant and just say that I'm a floating person. I can't do anything without manager approval, so there's really no point. At this point, something catches my eye. I see the window blind move. I notice 2 additional guys upstairs who are both staring down at me. I'm so uneasy I could be sick at this point. I tell the gentleman that I won't be entering without maintenance or a property manager present, due to it being an ongoing maintenance concern and there not being much I could personally do. He looks annoyed and finally slams the door in my face. I get back to the office and grab the maintenance supervisor for the property to chat about things regarding this encounter. The maintenance supervisor explained to me that there used to be an old man that lived in the apartment, but then his son took over the lease after he died. He told me that he noticed a lot of strange activity and individuals around the home since the dad died, but he hasn't personally witnessed anything illegal yet, so he just let it go. He explained they plan to make the move when the contract is over due to the conditions of the home. While I can't prove something horrible was going to happen if I enter the premises, this is by far the creepiest encounter I've had as a property manager in 7 years. I don't know exactly where to start, but years after this incident, I had flashbacks with all the details while talking to my girlfriend on the phone and telling each other about our memories. After hours of reading people's memories on Reddit, I have something to share, and I can't wait to see your reaction. This happened at the beginning of 2023. I'm a male, 22 at the time. I was working as a terminal agent at one of the biggest airports in Europe. My job description was mostly to give directions to arriving and departing passengers in this airport as big as the city, to solve their problems, to solve visa and passport related problems. For some reason, I can't tell you exactly which airport it is, but you can probably guess from the details I will give. Since this airport is in a really huge and very key location, it is one of the transfer points for passengers coming and going from Asia, Africa, Europe, and America. So it was in the nature of my job to encounter very strange types of people and events. I was working 12-hour shifts, some nights and some days. Working is determined by daily assignments. This incident happened during my 12-hour night shift on the transfer floor of the airport, the common point where international passengers wait for passport control before picking up their luggage, and where passengers of all incoming international flights flow. When we work, we're supposed to wait at a fixed point when passengers don't specifically call for us, but it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and since flights and passenger traffic had slowed down, I decided to patrol around a bit. I left my station and went to the gate of the only arriving flight at that time of night. I decided to wait there in case passengers needed help when the gate opened. After a while, the plane pulled up to the gate. The gate opened and a lot of normal looking people walked out and into the transfer center. Except that woman. That strange looking woman who made me feel cursed by the cold July air. She was brunette in her late 20s, covered in dirt and torn clothes. Her hair was missing in some places, and the hair that was there was rather unkempt and I think a bit burnt. When she saw me in my uniform with unusually large pupils, she walked up to me, looking scared and confused. "Excuse me, do you work here? I need help." "Damn it, of course you need help," I said to myself. I wanted to take her arm because she was having trouble walking, but the smell emanating from her made my nose hurt and I immediately abandoned the idea. Don't judge, it wasn't normal sweat smell, but it smelled like she was already dead. I sat her down on a seat reserved for passengers, and I stood opposite of her, asking her in a calm voice how I could help her. I had a very bad experience. That's why I'm running away from there. I haven't eaten in days, and I think there's something in the water that they gave us on the plane. Since I drank it, I don't feel well and my mind is fuzzy. I didn't find what she was saying very convincing. I thought she was having some kind of mental breakdown because her gestures and intonations when she spoke were very strange. But I was also familiar with the aviation rules, and I knew that something like this should be reported immediately to the police. When I told her this, she didn't like that idea. She stood up and shook me by my shoulders and shouted, "No police! Never the police!" Dude, she started laughing, looking up at the ceiling like there was something up there. This woman was making strange gestures with her hands, but her cheerful demeanor was broken by a sudden burst of crying. "No police. They won't like it." "They? The police? That's their job." "Who said anything about the cops? I'm talking about the people who did this to me." As she said this, she lifted up her burnt hair that had fallen from her forehead, and I saw the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. I've seen a lot of strange tattoos because of the environment I studied and lived in, but this was different. Right in the center of her forehead was a tattoo that looked like a barcode, like one you find on products in grocery stores, with serial numbers underneath. At first, I thought it was just a strange fashion sense for aesthetic purposes, but her strange behavior in some documentaries I've seen made me think that it was probably used by human traffickers to mark the people so they could be easily identified and caught when they escape. When she realized that I couldn't help her the way she wanted, she at least wanted to use my phone. I told her that she's not allowed to use my phone due to the airport security rules and that she could use a payphone if she wanted to. Of course, she didn't have any money with her, and I was not allowed to give her money. Since she showed aggressive behaviors towards me every time I insisted on talking to the police, I finally decided to do it secretly and brought her some food and water before going to the police. When I arrived at the police station on the transfer floor, the policemen were taking advantage of the calm night, resting. When I told them about what happened to me and pointed to the woman, they told me that it was just one of the refugees coming to our country, and that's why she was acting like that, because she wanted us to let her enter illegally. They didn't take it very seriously, and unfortunately, I had to leave without a solution. When I went back to the woman, I realized that she had not touched the food or water I had brought her, and repeatedly refused to consume them with fear in her eyes. I decided to have a conversation with the woman, so not to be too judgmental. When I asked her name, she gave me a very strange answer that I've never heard before. It was like a name from some ancient language, and even now I don't remember exactly what she said. When I asked her where she came from and where she was going, she said she didn't know. To get this information, I took her boarding pass and her passport from her hand. I don't remember exactly, but she was coming from an Asian country, and her next destination was not written on the boarding pass, so her ticket was only valid until here. I decided to end our conversation, which was not very productive, and leave her alone to observe her from a distance. I go back to my station for some paperwork and decide to take care of it in the meantime. Later that morning, around 6 a.m., my other colleague was due to arrive at the station to take my shift. I was going to exit the door where they were going to enter, and before I left, I decided to stop by again on my way to see this strange female visitor. When I went up to her, she was holding a book in her hand. It was a book with a very old cover and yellowed paper, but I didn't understand what was written in it until she pointed at me and called me over. Even then, I didn't understand it. It was a book written in alphabets I don't know, in a language I didn't know. I don't want you to think I'm making this up, but it was a book with strange figures of people and other drawings. This woman pointed to one of the drawings and said, "This is how they do this." They do what like this? I was confused. Can you be a little bit more specific? When I said that, she shook her head from side to side, laughing. She had an expression as if I wouldn't understand even if she explained it. I told her that a friend of mine would be arriving soon in my place, and if she had any problems or needed anything, she could contact them as she wished. I gave her directions to the restroom, where she could get some food, the police station, and the ticket office. After a few seconds of looking at my face, she thanked me in tears and took my hands with both of hers and looked at me in the eyes. I didn't know exactly what happened to her, but at that moment my heart broke and I put my hand over hers and nodded. It was time to leave when my friend, who was coming behind me to take my place, touched me, and I introduced them to the woman and secretly informed them about the situation. My friend told me that they were going to take special care of her. When I woke up the next day, I texted my friend and asked them how she was doing. They told me that after I introduced them to her, they left to take care of another passenger, and that they never saw her again for the rest of the day. They said when they asked the passport police and ticket offices, they told them that they were busy enough as it is and that they don't pay much attention to people, and brushed them off. I never saw this woman on my next shifts, and I've never heard from her again. Still gives me goosebumps when I remember it. I would be interested in your comments on the incident. If there's anything I missed or you want to ask,